Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Zach Young, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're joined by Karl Muir, a business growth strategist who helps coaches, consultants, and small business owners scale by creating conversion systems that sell on autopilot. With a focus on smart funnels, automated lead generation, and content strategy that builds know, like, and trust with audiences, Karl teaches founders how to stop chasing clients and instead design systems that consistently attract and convert. He's passionate about simplifying marketing and sales so business owners can focus on impact, not endless busy work. And today we'll explore how he helps entrepreneurs build momentum and sustainable growth online. Karl, a very, very warm welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you very much. And what an introduction. Now I've got to live up to it.
Hey, I stole it all from your social media, so please, no reason to be modest. Very good. Karl, going to be a great episode, clearly. A lot to dive into. Before we do, I do like to start with your background, though. So before becoming a growth strategist, can you walk us through what were you doing previously and what was really your inspiration to get into this space?
Yeah, sure. It's a little bit up and down. Like when I was 18, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do for a living, like most 18-year-olds, especially over in this country. And I found myself in the pub. So the natural progression was obviously to work in the pub industry. So I think I sort of hung around for a little while, about 6.5 years, still not knowing what I wanted to do. Worked my way up into working in bars, restaurants, up to sort of senior management level. And then one day thought, I don't actually want to be doing this. I don't enjoy what I'm doing. I stopped eating and drinking what I was selling. So I started going to the gym. And I thought, oh, maybe there's something in this gym career. And a friend qualified as a personal trainer. I did the same. So literally I left the pub industry on the Friday, started my personal training qualification on the Monday. It couldn't be any different from one to the other. And then sort of 20 years later, sort of moved up into delivering personal training qualifications. And part of that was, oh, here you go, Zach, here's your certificate, but now let's talk about sales, marketing. How are you actually going to become a personal trainer? Because I give you the certificate so you're qualified as one. But as we both know, it's very different when you're a business owner. So that's the route I went down with my qualifications. And then people kept coming to me saying, oh, I'm already qualified, but can you help me with my sales and marketing? And I was like, well, I could. That's not what I do. I do it as part of my qualification. And they're like, oh, don't worry, can we just pay you whatever? And can you show us? So it was a natural progression that route. And then a lot of people from other industries saying, oh, do you just work in the fitness industry? Can you help my small business? And so I've just massive pivot over the last sort of 5-6 years straight into marketing and stepped away from the fitness industry. So I don't do the qualifications or anything anymore. And then, yeah, so it's sort of a bit of a natural progression. I say natural, maybe the pub industry to the fitness industry wasn't maybe a natural progression, but from thereafter it was.
Yeah, very natural there. But I think you brought up a really good point where a lot of people are like, hey, I have this talent or skill, whether it's fitness, whether it's mentoring, life coaching, whatever it is. But most people, they don't have the marketing sales as well. And that's where people struggle. So
Yeah,
they definitely need help in a lot of areas, that's for sure.
no, 100%. And I think like what you just said there, like hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Because no matter what you qualify in, like I know some of the terms might be slightly different in the US to the UK, but if you train to be a beauty technician, for example, you're great at being a beauty technician, but then here's your certificate, there's the door, see you later, and you're like, yeah, I'm qualified. Now what? Because you don't know how to, like you said, you don't know how to run a business. And a lot of running a business in this day and age, as we both know, is sales, marketing, and it's a bit of a shame really, isn't it? Because you can be the best personal trainer, you can be the best nail technician, but you're going to suffer if you don't learn the business and the marketing skills to go alongside it.
Mm, very well said. Very well said. I think that leads perfectly into what you're doing today. Can you walk us through Birdie Digital? What does working with Karl look like today? I know we touched on a little bit, but who you're typically working with, everything like that.
Yeah, and as again, going back to your brilliant intro, I work with coaches and consultants, small business owners, and I do the messy sort of middle to back end part A lot of people are trying to gather momentum and awareness on their socials. Brilliant. But if you're not sending them anywhere, you're basically just warming up an audience to put on your cold lead list. So what I do on the back end is make sure that people are nurtured. And what I mean by that is they might click a link on your website, fill out an opt-in, they get delivered a lead magnet, then they go down a nurture sequence and ultimately towards a sales call. Depending on what it is you sell, obviously, it could just go to a checkout page, but it's keeping them warm in the back end. And what I always say to people, if you actually imagine a funnel, you're doing the top bit, as in my clients do the top bit with their content. I do that middle bit, and then they jump in and do the sales call on the bottom.
Hmm. Got it. Okay. In the intro, I mentioned something that is huge in this day and age, right? Which is know, like, and trust. In this world of AI slop, and there's millions of fitness coaches out there, millions of coaches on Instagram, right? So people need to know, like, and trust you before they're going to spend a dime with you. How do you really hone in on that? How do you get cold people to start to know, like, and trust your clients?
I think it's sort of again, I'm very simple when it comes to funnel building and what I say to my clients, and it's pretty much what I just said a second ago. Like people showing up on socials, they get an audience. So obviously they've got the first part of that puzzle, right? People are getting to know them, they're getting to like them, they're getting to see them. And then how do we build trust? It's like if you've got this problem, I've got the solution. Do you want it? Let's have a chat, is what most people sort of go around in that little loop. But when they opt in and then they're followed up regularly with email content, WhatsApp messages, voice notes, etc., that's the nurture bit. And that's also where you build that sort of like and trust. And then, like I said, by the time they get onto a call, if all of that's done correctly,
Mhm.
people that turn up to sales calls should be there pretty much to ask questions before they want to buy. If you're getting too many sales calls where, oh, hey, Zach, thanks for taking the call, and then they ask you loads of questions and get some free advice, they're not the good fit because they've they've even gone through in what some people assume is a funnel, but if they're not being sort of, I was going to say sold to is the wrong word, but if they're not being sort of nurtured and pointed towards, here's who we help, here's what we do, and here's who we do it for, you don't want them on the call. So
Mm.
it's just that sort of that middle bit of making sure if you're messaging on the front end, and obviously as you can imagine, that's sometimes a conversation I have with clients. If you're not saying on the front end with your content, here's who I'm looking to work with, you're going to get a lot of calls or a lot of DMs that are just, oh, can you help me? Because you've not been really clear on that front end. So you've got to make sure all the way through that funnel, you're again sort of giving them the advice, giving them the support, but ultimately, as horrible as it sounds, we want to make sales at the end of the day, right? So we need to make sure that they're nurtured in a way that when they do turn up to a call, you're speaking to your ideal customer.
Mm, absolutely. Let's say, and I'm sure this varies for a lot of people you work with, but let's think about your typical fitness coach. I'm assuming you've worked with a decent amount of fitness coaches.
Yeah, still work for a decent amount, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to that process, right, getting them to know, like, and trust, what would you say is the average time frame? Someone comes in as, a cold lead, they start going through that process, then they book a call. What would you say is an average time frame for that?
God, how long's a piece of string is the answer to that one, unfortunately, because I'm sure you've had them, I've got them, we've both got them, we've had them in the past. People that probably look at what you're doing and you do not know they exist. They might follow you on socials, but they've never once liked anything, they've never once DM anything, they don't download anything. So people like that, that doesn't mean that they're not interested, that just means that they're not engaging with your content. But at some point, if you've done a post, let's use fitness coaches as an example. If you've done one post tomorrow saying about your 6 week fat loss program that starts in January, and then we hit the right triggers and pain points in that post, that person, who over here we call a lurker, would see that, ultimately come straight to your DMs and go, Zach, you've got me. Where do I sign up? And again, we
Mhm.
look at it like, who the hell are you? Where have you come from? I've never seen your name before, and you just want to go straight to a sale. So people like that, we don't always know exist. So it's hard to track how long they've been following us, how long it's taken to get them onto that call. Obviously, we can ask them, but it's very vague. Oh, I've been following you for 6 months. Okay, fine. And obviously, that's not a great metric because not everyone's going to be like that. But it comes back to again, it's not something that I focus on, but obviously coaches and consultants really need to understand. It's what they do on the front end, like
Mm.
your hand raiser posts. Like if, again, talking about your podcast, for example, if next week you put a post on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I've got 3 podcast spots in January. Who wants them?" That's a hand raiser post, right? So people would be like, "Oh yeah, I want one." Then they get in contact. So that's one way of doing it. Then it's the sort of more natural, like I said, the 6 week fat loss program. Here's what it is. Here's who it's for. Here's when it starts. We've only got 10 spots available. Hand raiser post. They come in. So sometimes you can almost, not predict's probably the wrong word, but you can almost like plan your quarters of the year at a time and say, if I'm going to do a 6 week program here, we need 50 people on it. So we need to do 20 posts around it. We need to put them towards a lead magnet. Then our receptionist, for example, is going to call those people and get them onto there. So it's very sort of strategic, as in, here's the steps we need to do to plan it. Who's looking at your content? So there's a long-winded circle back to your question, but who's looking at your content and how long it gets to take them in is just going to vary massively. Like you couldn't sort of get a new follower today and guarantee that in 6 weeks they're going to be a client.
Yeah.
It is very much sort of hitting those triggers and testing what works, what doesn't work, and then once you've got something, you just repeat it on cycle. And that,
Yeah.
in a way, you should know that if I'm doing like a 6 week launch to a product, you should roughly start to figure out that is the right time frame to fill that cohort of clients, for example.
Hmm. Got it. Okay. I'll follow that up with another very possibly open-ended question because I think it comes very much into play with kind of the space we're talking about, right? Organic content, great. I'm curious, does or when do paid ads come into play with your clients?
Paid ads are a brilliant tool, and a lot of people, because we run paid ads, and a lot of people come to me going, "Oh, can you run Facebook ads?" Yep. And the first question I ask is, "What's your offer?" Because if they don't know what they're selling or who they're selling to, then paid ads are an absolute waste of time. You might as well go in your back garden and burn $500 because, like, just throwing out something that's fairly generic that hasn't really got the next part of that funnel mapped out behind it is pointless. And it's almost the same as organic content, right? A lot of people are just posting for posting's sake, but you need to have some sort of strategy behind your posting. And it's even more apparent with Facebook ads. And the problem I see and hear fairly regularly is, "Oh, I just need to run Facebook ads to get in front of more people." But if you're not selling a product or service organically, all you're doing by putting money behind Facebook ads is showing more people the product or service that you're not selling. So it's almost like, if you think like, let's go to a store local to you in the States, it's not doing very well. No one's going in there. And then all of a sudden they start making a big fanfare outside, like, "Come to our store, come to our store." It's just going to repel people because they're like, "Oh God, I've heard that's a really bad place." And now they're telling me like to come in. It's You're just sort of amplifying it. You're almost saying like, "Look at our rubbish offer." Like now you're showing it to more and more people. So if
Yeah.
you sort of put a number on it, let's say organically, you're reaching 1,000 people with your posts, and you boost or you spend money on ads and you reach 10,000 people, you're just, like I said, you're just showing your non-existent offer to more and more people. And if people aren't buying it, they're obviously confused by something.
Yeah. Got it. So what I'm hearing there is obviously you need the offer figured out first, right?
100%.
You need
And
the
that's what's, sorry, go on.
back end started first and get some sort of confirmation via organic,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to be doing 100K a month organic, but start making some sales. Then you can, pour some gas on the fire, then blow it up with paid ads. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the problem that I sort of overcome in my own business fairly recently was we were attracting people that wanted us to do their content for them. So part of what we do, it was, I have to say was, we would obviously build all their funnel, build all the back end system, but because clients were still sort of stuck doing that front end part, we said, "Okay, look, we'll do 3 posts a week for you, but they're all pointing people to the offer, the sale, the funnel," which is fine. But then when they weren't doing additional content, outreach, you know what it's like, unfortunately, this day and age with the algorithm, you've got to play the game, you've got to like, comment, you've got to go and DM people. But they weren't doing that front end bit in relation to the content. So all of a sudden it was like, oh, the content you're putting out isn't pointing people towards the funnel. And it was like, well, the content we're putting out is pointing people towards the funnel, but you still need to sort of give them that nudge if they don't automatically jump in. So if I sent you a link and I can see through the back end system that you've not clicked it yet, quick little voice note. Oh, hey Zach, how you doing? Did you manage to grab that link I sent you the other day? Because everyone's busy, right? But if they're not doing that, then that goes into it. So the shift that we made was now we only speak to or attract coaches, consultants, and business owners who are already selling something. They already know, going back to what we're talking about, Facebook ads, they already know that their offer and service is wanted, and then we can scale it on the back end because if we sort of plug in the automations, it stops them sending manual emails, manual reach out, and stuff like that. So that's where we sort of come in and scale it.
Mm.
But like I said, it just goes back to that initial offer. If you haven't got your ideal customer nailed on and your offer, is it actually something that they want? Then you're going to struggle. So I think they're the two things you really need to keep coming back to.
Yeah. Taking somebody from, let's say, step 3 to step 5 is much easier than taking someone sometimes from step 0 to 1. And that's not just the
100%.
business side, it's sometimes working with the mindset of someone at step 0, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So that makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about, your clients, client acquisition systems. I got to assume you're using a very similar client acquisition system to bring in your clients.
Yeah, it's pretty much like if someone opts in for a lead magnet, for a call, whatever it may be, they pretty much go through the funnel. So it's quite nice that they can see that. Sometimes with my own lead magnets and stuff, I've blatantly said, like, scan this and you're going to go through my WhatsApp automation funnel. And it's almost like, oh, hey, Zach, yeah, this is what would happen first, then this would happen. So they get all the automations almost like a walkthrough. So obviously it stops me having to jump on multiple calls with multiple people just to show them the process. I think,
Hmm.
well, I might as well put you through the process and you can see what a real life client would see. But yeah, all of mine, I must admit, I'm probably my worst client, as we probably all are, because I love servicing other people's systems and funnels, and then mine's like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I've heard that many times. That is for sure. Carl, you've been doing this 5 or 6 years now, like you said. Have you built out a team working with you at all, or are you a one-man show?
I've got a couple of sort of VAs that do a few little bits and pieces. I think hopefully you're not along in agreement, but when you work for yourself, you like to do everything. But I have business coaches that sort of, are always in the back of my head saying, you need to outsource, you need to scale, you need to do this. So I'm trying to get better at letting go of a few things. And it's also like, it's really good that it sort of ties into what I help people with, because the bottleneck is generally you. And if you're stuck in your business, again, if we're sort of, talking about the whole part of the funnel, if you're stuck, the one that's doing the content, that's doing the calls, that's sending the emails, that's doing the automations, that's doing the follow-ups, it's, you've got to give some of that up. And again, I'm probably saying this out loud to you just so I can watch it back in agreement and go, I need to listen to my own advice.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good place to be, right? You got a good, successful business, but like you said, when you're the bottleneck, sometimes you just have a high-paying job,
Yeah, exactly that.
right?
And yeah, like you always say, like, oh, I work for myself. And then if you listen to that line, you do actually work for yourself. You're not a business owner, you just work for yourself.
That's it.
So yeah, it's funny when you sort of say it to other people and you're like, oh, I should really do more of that myself. But again, it sort of goes back to, like I said, that bottleneck and just getting out of your own way, knowing when to outsource things and when to bring team members in and stuff like that. So yeah, I've got a couple of people that do a few of the sort of lower level bits and pieces for me. Because again, I'm a firm believer that that's where you need to bring people in, because you're the one that does the sales calls, you're the one that does the client consultations and stuff like that. And then, you need to give up some of the lower hanging bits to team members.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. 2026 is slowly, but also very quickly coming up on us. Any goals you've set for yourself in the business, let's say next year you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, they're all. sort of, I've got pretty much next year mapped out income wise and what I need to do each quarter to get there, and almost down to per month, per week to sort of get to it. I think sometimes, even if we map that out and it may be a too big a goal that we're not going to hit, we can obviously adjust it. But I think having that clarity, almost, especially, like you said, in the approach to Christmas, it's almost like, I've already planned at least the first quarter. I roughly know what I'm doing. There's a load of numbers there that need to be hit. So then you can sort of go and enjoy Christmas and the New Year, right? But yeah, so it's sort of monetary things. I think taking on team members, there's a few things like that in there. Again, if I get to a certain point in the business, that I'll bring in someone on a more sort of permanent freelance role, if that makes sense. And then it's just, yeah, just like I said, outsourcing stuff, because the more that I can outsource and get out of my own way, then I can do more of the client facing and sort of sales side of things. So yeah, I don't know if there's sort of like an ironed on goal there without giving you figures, but there is a few in place.
Yeah, all good ones to have. Karl, where can the listeners find you? Where can they connect with you online?
If most socials are Karl Muir, KarlMuir, I'm Karl Muir, I am. Or birdiedigital.co.uk. But yeah, LinkedIn and Instagram are favourite places to hang out and chat to people, so definitely head there.
Perfect. Karl, pleasure having you on, my friend. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. And that will wrap up another inspiring episode of the Founders Feature. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go and connect with Karl on all of his social media and his website. All of those links will be in the show notes and description down below. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or agency owner, and you're looking to scale your business, and you really want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to hop on a call with our team and discover how we went from 0 to 30 million per year in less than 3 years. Until then, keep on climbing.